Hello, my name is Len Baer. I am here every Sunday with Anna Toledo to give you an update on the historic lawsuit, Target Justice v. Garland. If you have not heard about this lawsuit, which I really doubt, this is the importance of this case is so hard to overestimate. I recently posted a Substack explaining why we call this case historic. And it's historic not because it's about targeted individuals. It's because the due process clause is at stake at the core of this lawsuit. And so constitutionally, fundamentally, it is so important to every American, not just targeted individuals, every American. And with that, I'd like to say hi to our plaintiff's attorney, a board member of Targeted Justice, and a very, very nice lady whom I like a lot. We became friends, and I just admire what you do. Anna, good morning.
Good morning, Len, and same goes to you. I admire, and you're my inspiration in so many ways to keep going. So good morning. Nice to be here.
Good morning to you. And today we also have a very special guest. His name is James Martinez. And if you have not heard this name, you probably heard about MKULTRA and Churches Commission. And he was one of the whistleblowers in the MKULTRA investigation. His work was incorporated into a famous book by Walter Bowart, Operation Mind Control. If you have not heard about this book, you really don't know what MKULTRA is about. So, James, I know it was sort of a last-minute thing, and we really appreciate you made the time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, James, we'll talk to you a little later. For now, we will talk to Anna, who will give us an update what transpired in the lawsuit filings, what work has been done. Please give us an update, Anna.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I don't have much to report in terms of filing, because this week it was my goal. It was my goal to have filed the opposition to the motion to dismiss by today. However, it's working every day, 12-hour days. Sometimes it's not enough, because for many reasons. Now I have to figure out how to reduce the amount of pages, because there's a 25-page limit and there is so much to be said. But most importantly is that this case presents in the United States courts, most of the arguments, yes, there is the law, but many of the arguments, particularly in the Bivens context, which is when you sue federal officials for civil rights violations, well, a lot of that is based on prior case law. And the facts of these cases are so outrageous in so many ways that they do not adhere. They cannot be boxed into most of the case law that already exists. So that's what I love about this profession, that it calls for the creativity of the mind, where you have to explain how, for example, the fact that innocent civilians are placed in this list, and this list is distributed, well, that constitutes a seizure of their privacy, because they have their privacy right and their right to their reputation. Right to their reputation is a corollary of the privacy rights that are contained and protected by the Fourth Amendment. There's also the aspects of the undue and illicit electronic surveillance and sneak and peeks and all of the going into the houses of people. That's like the second aspect of it. But the primary aspect, which is the uncontroverted fact that innocent civilians are being placed on this list and then nefarious consequence happening thereafter. That is what I'm dealing with. Also, I am targeted too, and as you can imagine, that the targeting on many people has been racked up since the filing of the lawsuit. So I sometimes all of a sudden I just fall asleep out of nowhere, and it's a huge effort, but it's not one that I haven't been able to fight and prevail against. So I sent you this morning a little bit of some of the arguments that we're touching upon. And while I've been writing this, one of the things that shocked me when I did research is that there have been dozens, if not hundreds, of lawsuits filed pro se by many targeted individuals in the federal realm. I'm going to make it, after I'm done with this, I'm going to make an inventory of the plaintiffs, the defendants, and most of them obviously have been dismissed. They all been dismissed, and sometimes without even having the benefit of the defendants having answered. Many of these are not published in the official federal supplement books. They are only published in Westlaw. And I wasn't gonna devote my time into reading why each one was dismissed, but that is an exercise that I'm going to be doing, because I think that the problem of targeted individuals is something that has been popping up around the nation in different courtrooms. And since it's being done pro se and, maybe sometimes all over the place in terms of not knowing exactly where it initiated from, well, these cases have been dismissed, but that doesn't mean that those people didn't have a real cause of action and real damages. So I'm going to be working on that as soon as I file this, which I intend to file probably by Monday. One of the aspects that when you're working, thinking all the time, thinking, one of the things that that became very clear in this case, which is that at the stage of motion to dismiss, which is this initial stage, the court has to take as true the well-pleaded facts in a complaint, meaning that even if they sound a little strange, if they are well pleaded, it is the court's duty, as per the Supreme Court precedent, it is the court's duty to deem them as correct. Later on, with discovery and summary, that enters the summary judgment stage where defendants can say, well, this is not plausible before this and this reason. But at this stage, every statement of fact contained in the complaint that is well averred, the court must take as true, unless it's something just absolutely ridiculous, which is not the case here, because as I have repeated many times, over 80% of this lawsuit is based on government documents and prior testimony. Going to that prior testimony, we have three conflicting testimonies, which are or evidences, which is what should ring all these bells, and it's one of the things that I'm arguing for, and it is that the United States, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's former deputy director of the Terrorist Screening Center stated under penalty of perjury that there were some exceptions to the terrorists having derogatory information or suspicious, reasonable grounds to include people in the list, but those were exceptions that had to do with immigration purposes. That's one part. Then you have Mr. Robinson in this case stating that there's other people included in there, but it's under secret criteria, which one of the arguments we're saying here is that's completely illegal. You cannot have, in the United States government, under the Administrative Procedures Act, all the actions that agencies carry out have to be published. The regulations have to be publicized. So that's another version. And then you have the third version, which is the Office of Inspector General of the Department of Justice and the Department of Justice audit reports of the Terrorist Screening Center, where they talk about non-investigative subjects being illicitly on the list because they don't either meet the criteria or the investigations were closed and they were never taken out of the list, and many other reasons. But the important thing is that those reports, none of them mention the supposedly immigration purposes that Mr. Groh mentioned in his sworn statement as the exception to the rule, which is no exception really, because 97% of the people on the TSDB are under handling codes 3 and 4, which are the people that when they go to the airport don't have to go through additional screening as the people in selection in number 2. Okay, so Mr. Gross say, no, it's a little exception, a few people. No, it's not. It's 97% of the list. And in fact, the United States Department of Justice documents attest that only 0.29% of the entire TSDB at the time of that audit report constitute known and suspected terrorists. Only 0.29%, not even a 1% of the entire list. So what we're talking here is a terrorist database that is not for terrorists. And that's illegal because the Homeland Security Presidential Directive clearly states that that is a law enforcement tool to include known and suspected terrorists. This takes me to another of the arguments that we're going to be setting forth before the court, which is that federal officials only have immunity when they act pursuant to the law. And maybe they deviate a little bit, but they're acting. In this context, we have that there's not even a statute from Congress. It's an executive order, and Mr. Ray and Mr. Cable are clearly deviating from the instruction of the executive order that says you are to watch out for the civil and constitutional rights of people, and you are only to put known and suspected terrorists on this list. And that is an outrageous deviation of the law. Therefore, it is our argument they are not entitled to immunity. And why this is really important is because, you see, like Len, like you like to mention the synchronicity of the historic moment we're living in. You know, we filed suit in January, and just 3 weeks ago, a month ago, the whistleblowers in Congress were stating, number one, that the top brass of the FBI forces agents to swell the ranks, the list of the TSDB, and classify them as domestic terrorists, number one. And number two, that financial incentives and bonuses are given to people that classify innocent Americans as domestic terrorists. Why would anybody be paying agents to carry out the illegal act of categorizing an innocent civilian, an innocent American citizen or legal resident as a domestic terrorist? That comes from above. The only ones that can do that are the supervisors. Not, in fact, one of the whistleblowers says, this is a conduct that even if I didn't want to carry out, or my supervisor didn't want to carry out, we couldn't fix the system. And this is part of the congressional record. So it is our position that, and I'm only discussing, the context of Mr. Ray and Mr. Cable, because I will also obviously discuss the other ones. But in terms of these two persons, history, the synchronicity of events has gotten to the point where the court has to take judicial notice of the fact that these are not just, the well-pled facts of a complaint, but right now our present history is telling us that there is a lot of truth to these allegations. There's also the articles of impeachment against the director of one of our defendants in his individual capacity, precisely for a irregular or illegal conduct. So in this sense, I think that, that so many things are happening because this is a case that have to have happened a long time ago, but this is the historic moment where it had to happen, because all the parts are coming of the jigsaw puzzle are coming into place. And for example, as James will probably talk about, the fact that MKULTRA and COINTELPRO, even though it has been acknowledged that they were illegal, that they violated the civil and human rights of people, there were no consequences for anyone. It was not even a slap in the hand. And what we intend to do here is to ensure that those crimes against humanity, the ones that in the past and the ongoing ones right now, stop once and for all. So, it is our posture that qualified immunity does not apply here, because these are willful violations of the law. The only law, and it's not even law, which is the executive order, says they cannot do this. They can only put known and suspected terrorists on this list. And then there's the privacy rights. There's the TransUnion versus Ramirez case that I have already talked about, that concluded categorically that a person that is erroneously designated as a terrorist, and that information is publicized to third parties, that is presumed to cause a damage, and that grants a person injury in fact. So in that sense, I'm working very hard to get it all filed probably by tomorrow. I only have this one pair of eyes to look at my documents, contrary to, our adversaries that have all these levels of review. So I just have my God helping me in this huge endeavor that I have. And I thank everybody supporting me in this endeavor. Also, regarding, for example, Mr. Garland, we cannot lose sight of the fact that the three main defendants, Mr. Ray, Mr. Garland, and Mr. Mayorkas, have been issued articles of impeachment. The conduct has been documented before Congress, and I'm going to just request that the court, take judicial notice, as they have so far, as I requested so far, as part of the adjudication of the motion to dismiss. So, I don't have much more to report because, like I said, I haven't filed it yet. I have been working real hard on it, and it's just a huge endeavor, but I'm very happy because the historic moment that we are living, coupled with the strong, documentation, the thorough documentation that is behind this lawsuit, is going to make it very hard for it to go the way of the dozens, if not hundreds, of people that tried to petition for redress of grievances and were not able to. I'm confident that the truth and justice is going to prevail, and that we're going to move on to discovering the case. I don't know if you have any questions, Glenn?
I actually do. A couple of questions that came to mind. First of all, first is a comment. The fact that not just the agencies, but the individuals are being named defendant is extremely important, because without individual responsibility, nothing will happen. Everybody will be hiding behind this government bureaucracy, and it's like, this is just the way we do it. No, there has to be an individual responsibility. Then things will change. Send these people to jail. Then people who will take their place will think twice whether they want to follow in their steps. So that individual responsibility is extremely important, and I support this strategy 100%. I'm looking forward to reading the motion. And my second question is, it's actually something that has been on my mind. You mentioned that there are three conflicting statements in this case, and one of them is by Mr. Robinson, who in his declaration mentioned secret criteria. And the motion that contains that exhibit talks about law enforcement privilege. So I'm a little confused. Are these secret criteria criminal criteria, or are they national security criteria? Because if the motion to dismiss talks about law enforcement privilege, that's a criminal. That's not a national security term. It only applies to criminal. And so, and then there's a declaration that talks about secret criteria, and we can't disclose them to the public. So is he also talking about criminal cases? Because this is not a criminal database. This is a database with terrorists and suspected terrorists. It's not a criminal database. Please indulge my curiosity. This has been on my mind for a few weeks now.
Okay, well, one of the cases that I am citing in my reply is that the government likes to pull out the flag of national security when they don't want to answer things that would reflect illegalities, just hush hush. However, there is an executive order that already did away with that and saying no, national security and classified documents cannot be classified and information if it's to cover up agency malfeasance or agent malfeasance. The law enforcement privilege is for the protection of sources, for example, or investigative methods, for example. And so they have successfully alleged that in the prior cases challenging the TSDB because they have involved suspected terrorists. However, in this case, it is inappropriate to allege it because none of the people in handling codes 3 and 4 are criminal targets. Everybody is a non-investigative subject, and they have been placed in that list, even though there is a total absence of reasonable suspicion to believe they are tied to terrorist activity, and that is illegal. So in this context, in this motion, they didn't talk about the law enforcement privilege. They talk about, national security concerns. But the thing is that national security concerns don't apply because, as very well Mr. Timothy Groh admitted, the people that are the exception to the rule do not constitute a terrorist threat. It is not a national security concern for the improper inclusion, the methodology, and the formulas they use to illegally and improperly include innocent civilians in this list. So all these labels are not applicable, and the court should disregard them. It's going to be our argument that the court disregard them because, first of all, none of these people have anything to do with criminal investigations of terrorism. Therefore, there is no law enforcement privilege that should protect any information. It's clear that if it is raised, it's only to try to shield from the discovery of information that will prove how illicit this practice of including innocent American citizens and residents in this list is. So that's part of what we're going to be arguing. But in this one, it's just regarding the national security, because there's no national security involved by their own admission.
Thank you, Anna. That was an excellent question. I have to admit, they made quite a mess. I mean, they just threw everything against the wall, and it sounds like they're just are trying to intimidate the judge. We have not heard from the judge, and I am looking forward to it, but they're just throwing everything, whether it makes sense or not. And this is a perfect example. It just doesn't even make sense, and yet they're just throwing stuff at the
If
judge.
I may add something, Ellen,
Yeah.
for example, they erroneously, incorrectly stated in the motion that non-investigative subjects or people in handling codes 3 and 4 have the alternative to remove their names through the Homeland Security process. That is not true. And that is very serious because, you know, you cannot make erroneous representations to the court. I'm very serious about that because when you go to court, it's supposed to do a fact-finding process. And in our complaint, we clearly stated that that process is only available for suspected terrorists that encounter problems when they travel. And despite the fact that our second amended complaint clearly states that, the individual capacity defendants in their motion stated that people in handling codes 3 and 4 have that available, that mechanism, and that is simply not true. So that's another of the aspects that I'm, going to be discussing. It's very complicated, but one of the things I absolutely love about my profession is that it compels me to continue learning every day more. And that's something I just love, because I think it's an exercise for the brain. And perhaps that's why they weren't able to do so much to me, because I exercise the brain a lot. And this is forcing me to exercise it even more.
Anna, you're doing just an outstanding job. And before we move to our special guest, I just want to read some of the top comments on the from the YouTube channel where we post our weekly updates, just to let you know how much you are appreciated. Craig LaForest from Australia. He's actually my friend, and he has the top comments. As a board member of ICATOR, I attended the demonstration in front of European Parliament building yesterday. He will be on one of our updates to tell us about this. It was overwhelming to see and meet so many people who have V2K and burns from directed microwaves. The cruelty which comes from the people using these on us is stunning. Young and older people were there with burns on their bodies from 5G towers and satellites. Thank you, my dear friend Len, and thank you, Anna. You are remarkable the way you each focus on helping so many people. It's an insult to our intelligence that perpetrators of these crimes don't believe a creator or a higher power will not bring them to justice. And just a couple more. From Jack's Dominance. Thank you for the words of hope, encouragement, and inspiration. I will repeat, united we stand, divided we fall. And a comment from Hems. Always look forward to these updates. Thank you for all your hard work trying to put a stop to this horrendous targeting program. And this is just a snippet, this is just top comments. And every single one of them is full of love. People absolutely love you, and I think one day we will have a statue of Anna Toledo, the woman who brought down the targeting program. I mean, that if that's not an act of heroism, I don't know what is. So thank you, Anna. You just wanted to let you know how much you loved and appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're totally welcome. All right, and we have our special guest who just disappeared from our Zoom call. So, James, are you with us? All right. Something must be happening. Let's see. Let's wait for a minute. Let me see if he shows up. In the meantime, I will do a short introduction. Our special guest today is James Martinez. He's one of the original MKULTRA whistleblowers, alongside the late Walter Bowart, author of Operation Mind Control. I think we have James back. James, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can see you, but
Okay.
we can hear you.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize the connection was so bad. So I'm sorry. I just got on right now. I just got, I don't know, the signal wouldn't go through, but I apologize for that. But let me do this. Okay. Are we back?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay.
Yeah. So please tell us, this is you're part of history. You should be in history books. And I'm currently reading Operation Mind Control by Walter Bowart, and I understand you collaborate with him. You were one of the whistleblowers. Everybody remembers Seymour Hersh, whose article basically made the church commission possible. But the book, this incredible book that I'm reading every chapter, and it just filled with information that is so detailed, so specific, and it's just horrifying. No wonder that so this is what I heard, and I want you to tell me if it's true, that the first time the book was published in 1978, the CIA bought every single copy of it, which was later found in their warehouse, and that brought the price of an individual paper copy to what, like $2,500 or something like that. That's how pissed off the CIA was. That's how damaging that information was. And I know that since there have been, a couple of more editions, but it is an incredible book. So please tell us about your involvement and your perspective on what's going on today.
Okay. There was 2 books written. The one that you mentioned in 1978 was published by Dell Publishing. I got involved with Walter Bowart in the early 90s. I heard exactly what happened when that first book was published in 1978. Yes, most of the books were taken off the market when he was doing his publicity tour. There is videos of him talking about the fact that it was taken off the market. And a lot of people, when they learned about MKUltra, they learned it was confessed by the church committee, and the fact that, yeah, they were experimenting on civilians. But what was not told, and what the public was lied about, is that these programs were operational, hence the title, Operation Mind Control. And the precipice for the publishing of that and why that came to be is really from what was Walter Bowart's neighbor, who was a Vietnam vet. When he knew him before the war, he was one way, and then when he returned, he was a completely different way. And then he started investigating quietly what was going on behind the scenes. And indeed, he found out that these programs were operational, and that obviously became a concern for him and a lot of other people. One of the things that Anna brought up actually is one of the things that took place after the a book was published was the establishment of what was called the Freedom of Thought Foundation. And there were two major issues with the Freedom of Thought Foundation. One was the repeal of the National Security Act by exactly what she was just talking about, because national security can be anything. And unfortunately, it's used as a cover for all sorts of crime and very gray areas in terms of what national security is. And I understood because Colonel Fletcher Prouty, Colonel Tom Bearden, Walter Bowart, and a host of psychiatrists and psychologists and other freedom that people were interested in, maintaining cognitive liberty, said that this thing had to be repealed. And so did JFK, by the way. And I might add that, just so everybody knows here, that this lawsuit I put in Bobby Kennedy's email box. He did respond to it. He is aware of it. So, and also I want to add as well that there was a follow-up book called Operation Mind Control, the Special Researchers Edition. I was involved with that one. And it was during the chapters when we were putting all this together that we learned about some of the type of weaponry that was being contracted and used. In fact, there's a special chapter that we dedicated to an individual that we interviewed that was making directed energy weapons by contractors, doing it for contractors, but he wouldn't give out the clients' names. We put it in the chapter, one of the chapters of the special edition book. And I might add, if people want to listen to that, the audio book of that is on Spotify. It's under Operation Mind Control, James Martinez. All the audio file, I gave it all away for free. The special researchers edition, the original books, we only made 500 of them. And then obviously it was put on the web, but we really wanted the public to do something about this. And as far as I'm concerned, what Anna has done is truly profound. This is what needed to happen a long time ago. And the fact that it's happening now, it's kind of ironic with everything that's going on in the United States. So I'm fully supportive of this endeavor, and I will do my best I can do behind the scenes to make people understand now that there is a national dialogue that should be happening about this, because we cannot have functional government as long as this stuff is going on. It just doesn't work. We can't, nothing will work. So as far as I'm concerned, this needs to be part of the national talking points consistently. Because when we put out the Special Researchers Edition, it was a follow-up to the original book, which covered basically everything that's going on now, from directed energy weapons to what the world of psychiatry and big pharma was doing, to exactly what would be the future of what we call an organic human being, the immersion of machine into human biology, and ultimately the ending of free will itself. So this is a very, very important lawsuit. I'm going to continue to circulate it around to necessary parties so that it's discussed, because there's a lot of people made money off of what we did. And we didn't make money off that because of all the subject matter that we covered, because it had to do with ultimately human rights itself, and had to do with trafficking of children. It had to do with technology for behavior modification that we thought it was against people's free will, and not to mention what it was going to do politically and what it was going to do on a mass level as well. So this lawsuit is critical, and my thing is, whether or not whatever happens in the court is one thing, but I would like to see this in a public court of opinion, because most people, when they find out about this, and a lot of people do not, they're going to be on our side, because anybody that is that's used free speech today in a way that is not, in compliance with what's going on, and a lot of people know what's going on now, they're deemed domestic terrorists. And I would say 90% of my friends fall into the framework of this. And I spoke about this privately with a bunch of people, and they're already saying, well, how do I know if my name's on the list? Where do I find out? And if so, do I have to sue? What am I going to do? So it brings up an enormous amount of issues. The national security issue that's one of them. But the grievances for people that I know that are plaintiffs on this case, one of which I know fairly well and I've talked to privately, and I said probably about 6 months ago when I spoke to her that, you know, something needs to be done that's very, very public regarding this. And this is the first step for doing this. And I'm in full support of all these endeavors, including the plaintiffs and all the people that need for this to come out, because this is a very hidden secret hand that's been going on behind the scenes for a long time. Even in the 90s, we were talking about what this was going to be utilized for and what the potential dangers were against cognitive liberty, free speech, and an ability to control your own mind. I know many cases that were shown to me where people were they were using voice to skull technology and thought they were schizophrenics, and their lives ended because of the psychiatrist that they were put in touch with, and they were put on big pharma drugs, and it broke up it broke up their family, it broke up their lives, it broke up everything. It's very, very, very destructive, and this is why I'm will be a full supporter of this endeavor and all the people that are assisting to getting this out in the public.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your support and your passion, and you really set a standard for people who are like not targeted, but there are allies, and you are one of them, and we need to the goal for this Sunday update, I want to bring more people who are not TI, more people who for example used to be skeptical about all these claims and now they changed their mind. How did it happen? What convinced them? Because that would be a lesson for the rest of the population who's basically just avoiding. It's like it's something called information avoidance. If it's gonna upset you, I'm just gonna ignore it, and that's not a mature adult behavior. This is a childish. Just people basically throw tantrum and say, I don't want to hear about that. Well, next, just like you said, you have friends, I have friends, and I literally speak to everybody I meet at the gym, at the store. I just public awareness is the key. We cannot do it alone. Targeted individuals. The level of human tragedy that you mentioned is absolutely astonishing, but we cannot do it alone. My question for you is, you're pretty familiar with what was happening with MKULTRA, and you're familiar with the progress that the technology Neurotech has made. Some of it public, some of it top secret. But in your, please allow me to ask you to speculate. What would MKULTRA or some form of it would look like today? What's your vision of it?
Well, it's a complicated issue, and it takes a lot of study to really understand it. One of the things that people do not mention when this field is brought up is the work of Marshall McLuhan. Marshall McLuhan is mentioned periodically throughout Operation Mind Control because Walter Bowart always used to tell me, James, remember, technology dictates modality. And what I mean by that is technology, by the inclusion of it, every time there's a new technology that's introduced, it alters the sensory balance of human perception. And the computer and the iPhone and the eventual chipping of the human brain alters the sensory ratios of human perception, and also changes human values. Now, we mentioned Marshall McLuhan in there, and I know Andrew McLuhan with the McLuhan Institute quite well. And he told me that Marshall McLuhan met with the Bilderbergers in the 50s. And basically, when his discoveries and his commentary took place, all of that, what he said was weaponized. So if you're working the technical world, every time there's a creation of a new technology, it alters the sensory ratios of human perception. And therefore, it alters communications, it alters value systems, and it alters how we ultimately feel and process information. So that isn't even discussed, because I listen to a lot of people on podcasts and radio discuss this, and they never get into that ever, and which tells me they don't really know a lot about it. Because if you're not mentioning Marshall McLuhan and a lot of other media ecologists that are aware of this, you don't really know anything. So the ongoing escalation of technology and its effects on the human nervous system and how we relate to each other is critical. It's absolutely critical. Everybody knows now, because I've mentioned it throughout my kind of semi-public life, is when this cell phone, the mobile phone, was introduced, it altered sensory space. It altered how people deal with each other. It altered how they talk to each other. It altered their values. It altered everything. And now we have an electrocuted public. And what I mean by electrocuted is it means that when we changed to light speed communications, it altered everything. And living at the speed of light now is a very dangerous thing. And it's been put in the hands of the people that created that. What they're doing at DARPA, what they've been doing behind the scenes at the Pentagon in terms of the alteration of human perception and communications is critical. I mean, Marshall McLuhan used to say that there's no, all news is fake. He was the first to say it. Later, Trump took those words and magnified them to a different understanding of what McLuhan was saying. But one of the key components to understanding mind control and controlling human perception is the ability to have proper dialogue between individuals, so they have a larger understanding of how society and cultures have been slowly conditioned over time to be not caring of what's going on, to be a sense of separation. So I bring all this up because this lawsuit that Anna's done is a trigger point to create much more bigger dialogue, and in not only the United States, but other countries. Because it's my understanding there's targeted people, and this technology is probably being used in diplomatic areas in other countries. So without people jumping to conclusions, I would tell people that maybe listening to this or looking at the subject for the first time to read or listen to the audio versions of Operation Mind Control, the Special Research Edition, but also study communications, study the work of Marshall McLuhan, and then include that in their perspective and understanding what's going on. I'm communicating with you from the Amazon rainforest because I'm specifically taking a media fast. What I mean by is I'm stopping all my interactions with electronics. I jumped on this because of your request to do so, but normally I would take 3 weeks out and get off all of communications and give my nervous system a break so that I can deal with my organic self in a much more healthy manner. So I bring up all those subjects as pinpoints just so people can reference them and review them for themselves. But ultimately, I understand that this case that Anna's doing and everybody involved with it, I would just say that the interviews that she has done, whether it's Mike Adams or Sean Stone, circulate them everywhere, all over the place. I'm going to continue to elevate the publicity on this thing. And now that I know that you do this Sunday, I'm trying to get Bobby Kennedy on here, because he's one of the few people that I've spoken to personally that totally understands this and you don't have to sell it to him at all. And he's a targeted individual himself. He already knows that. So I want to just encourage everybody having to do with this to stand tall, stand their ground, and just keep moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this. I found your vision very insightful. And this is why, because I met and I spoke to a lot of very smart people, public intellectuals and professional skeptics. And when you bring the topic of mind control, they just sort of make fun of it. It's like, oh, it's like roboticized humans. No, this is not. What mind control is controlling your sensory input, and that will affect the decisions that you make. That's what ultimately mind control is. It's not this. So, and I met a lot of people who just simply don't understand it because they are, it's just not under their, it's not on their radar. And this is why a public conversation is extremely important. I'm 100% with you. And Bobby Kennedy, the slogan that his campaign has, "Tell the truth," is incredible. It's simple, and just I think that's what we need. We need to tell the truth and have a public conversation. So thank you very much for this complicated but very insightful, very adequate understanding of this problem.
You're welcome.
I have one more question for you. So last time on the Sunday show, at the end of the show, I told the story of Peter Buxton. And if you don't know who Peter Buxton is, he is just like you. He's a whistleblower who brought down the Tuskegee experiment. And I read an excerpt from President Clinton's apology speech, which was very powerful. I mean, I can imagine that something like that would be at the end of, destroying this targeting program. But then I got curious and I said, well, how many times has the US government actually apologized for any wrongdoing? And there are only 5 cases. And so one of them is Tuskegee, radiation studies, Japanese encampments, slavery, and treatment of indigenous people. 5 times. That's all. That's all we got from the government. 5 apologies. Why there's no apology for MKUltra? What do you think?
Because a lot of them, cognitive dissonance is a very powerful thing. And when somebody is presented with facts and testimony and things of that nature that support what mind control has done, it makes people very uncomfortable because nobody wants to be made a fool of in public. I think that's what it is mainly. I have not had problems myself convincing anybody. But I understand other people do, because people just blow it off because they just don't want to deal with it. Nobody wants to look like a fool. And that's a lot of what why people put up a strong wall between the truth and then understanding the truth. I think that's what it is. I mean, I haven't experienced that myself, but I haven't been yet in a situation where I'm going to have to confront authority figures that are going to try and gaslight me, which isn't going to work. I'm aware of all the techniques of, I mean, it became much more serious with me during the COVID thing, because I knew they were using group psychology and manipulative techniques to get people to bypass their free will and go under certain pressure techniques to get people to take the kill shot. And I was on a conference call and brought it up to Bobby Kennedy. Actually, that's how I got to know him, and said they're using mind control to complete this operation and get it done. And then I was furnished with the mind mapping documents that were given to me that were signed off in Europe, in England specifically. And they admitted it. They admitted what they were doing. This coercion, pressurized coercion, and the manipulation of facts and deception and all the things they were doing. This is what brought it up to me even more so. And I think that I did correspond with the psychologist that kind of got some national credit regarding mass formation psychology. And I'd agreed with that. But again, this subject matter it's complicated because there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. It's not just somebody sitting in a box somewhere and pressing a button. It doesn't work like that way at all. It's much more fine-tuned, and some of it is not aggressive. You know, when you're controlling and reformatting language, which is what's going on now. Language controls human perception. It's the lens between understanding and feeling. And when they're altering the word and altering the language, you're controlling human perception itself. That's just language. That doesn't have anything to do with electronics. They're doing that right now with this case. I know it. I haven't studied the case entirely, but when you start changing the language and use gaslighting on top of the language, it alters perception of it. And that's what they're doing throughout the US right now, is they're creating new language and redefining it, which is altering the sensory balance like we spoke about before. So it covers a lot of territory, but I would suggest people, if they're going to look at this from a kind of fresh perspective, it's to study the works and look what's going on at the McLuhan Institute, headed up by Andrew McLuhan, who I know well, and he understands exactly what's going on, though he stays in his section about this, because he's basically using his father's work as a tool, therapeutic metaphor, so to speak, to assist people to alter their perceptual lenses willingly. Some things the psychologists don't do at all, but this is a very important thing that what he's doing in the McLuhan Institute, but not only for just civilians, but also for children as well. So just wanted to add that.
Yes, that's very important. I noticed that just on the top off the top of my head, there's a new definition of truth. Did you know that? That truth is no longer a fact. It's just a culturally accepted concept. What? Since when? And then we redefined vaccines. But
Right.
I mean, these are really important concepts. And as far as mass formation hypothesis and manipulation of language, yes, this is extremely important. But what puzzles me is that a lot of people accept that, but there's a next level of manipulating somebody's way of thinking, and it's direct intervention at the brain level. And for a lot of people, it's a step too far, because there's a peer pressure. Nobody wants to get a label of a conspiracy theory. But this is where truth, not the new definition, but the actual scientific truth, which is never 100%, it's just a level of confidence. But nevertheless, this is the best method we have for actually knowing things. But people don't want to know it. So this whole conundrum is I just sometimes I'm just speechless. Like right now, I'm speechless. Please help me.
Well, language and the effect of language is primarily the tool in which we perceive the world. And when you're manipulating the language and you're doing that with technology, and we're moving at the speed of light, it gives tactical advantage to the people that are in the hand that have the technology. People say, well, what do you do, James? And I say, well, I'm a media ecologist, which is true. Media ecology is the study of how technology affects human awareness, perception, and ultimately the cultural conditioning of how we understand and communicate with each other. I specifically deal with disruptive technology and go and meet with the purveyors of the technology and to discuss the media ecological ramifications of the deployment of that technology before the technology is deployed, not after. They didn't do any of that. No, there was no discussions about what the cell phone was going to do. They just put it out, right? And there needs to be more dialogue between before there's any technology that's ever inserted into culture. That's what the McLuhan Institute is about. Just creating dialogue and understanding that our media extensions and our technologies affect our sensory ratios. Now, when you take that part and you add on the control of language and the use of directed energy weapons, just those three elements themselves, you can control populations with it. It's simple as that. Of course, with those several things, there's a lot of research regarding that matter. So that's why I always tell people, don't just read one book and think that you've got it all figured out. Make sure that you're studying communications, you're studying electronics, you're studying media ecology, and you ultimately have a more of a mosaic perception of how you perceive your world, because they know what they're doing. They've known for a long time. And the utilization of these technologies, including child abuse, are all intertwined, because ultimately your central nervous system, and when you manipulate the central nervous system, then ultimately you've hijacked the host being the personality or the identity that was you before your name, because you're not your name. That was a name given to you, but there's an entity and spirit inside of you that's the host, and that's what they're after. And that's why they give these children these electronics from such an early age, is because they hijack their central nervous system. That's part of the mind control that they're doing now. So it's very sadistic and evil.
Thank you very much, James. It's been so informative and so refreshing. And I just want to thank you for joining us today. I think a lot of people will be just not shocked, but encouraged by the level of your confidence. Like, you know what you're talking about. You have this multidisciplinary approach that allows people to see things from a different perspective instead of this narrow point of view. So please give us at the end some words of wisdom and tell us, are you optimistic, Steve? I mean, Steve, James, are you optimistic?
Well, I'm more optimistic now that this lawsuit has been filed, because this is the first time I've ever heard of somebody going head to head like this. This is really important, because that didn't exist before. I wasn't aware of somebody going head to head like this, but this has to be done now. So that's a very important part of being optimistic, is know that this fight is going on and that people are becoming more and more aware of their awareness. I always tell people, don't be on autopilot with perceptions and your feelings. And
We're losing you. We're losing the connection.
all the technological everything has a effect. It's only until we address and have proper dialogue about these things that we can get a hold of it and grab it. But there's a lot to it. So I would encourage people to know that there are ways out of it. There's what I know is going on behind the scenes right now is there's people meeting behind the scenes that are in fact trying to create a new language of understanding to deal with this as a counter to it. I know some of these groups, they haven't been really public yet, but this is part of it. So I'm very encouraged by what Anna is doing and all the people that have put their names as plaintiffs and the fact that there's creating national dialogue with this. So my job really is to see to it that this gets maximum publicity and dialogue, because this is the heart of the matter right here, because they can't pull off all the things that they're doing if without the manipulation of human perception, and it won't work at all. So this is extremely important to my life work and to that of others, and I won't allow the memory of my colleagues and friends who are no longer with us to think that their lives meant nothing, because now is our moment to liberate the human condition.
Amen.
Thank you, James. This is an incredibly encouraging message, and we're so grateful to you, because what you're doing is so important to us, but also to humanity. This is a question of what kind of species we will be. We at this turning point, and before it's too late, we need to preserve humanity, because that's who we are. This is how important it is. So thank you, James.
You got it. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anna, please give us some words of wisdom, so people can have a wonderful rest of Sunday. I know you have so much empathy, passion, enthusiasm in you. Give us some of that special sauce of Anna Toledo.
Well, first of all, I want to thank James, because it is courageous people like him that change the world. And for some weeks now, we have been communicating, and he has made possible what has gone out there. It's because, he has made a huge effort. And so I really have to, courage for me, I believe it's a virtue in danger of extinction. And when you see people that are the incarnation of courage, well, you get a lot of hope, and that's why I got out of this. I learned a lot more about him than I knew until we started this. I do want to address something that he said, that many of his friends are like, well, how do I know if I'm on the list? And that's obviously one of the goals that we seek with this lawsuit, to get access to, handling codes 3 and 4 and make it available to people, But one of the things that, as you know, the targeting begins so slight that people don't notice things happening. And I have been able to, it's just strange illnesses happen to you, or in the mornings you wake up, like I have mentioned, and your body it doesn't feel quite right. That's because you have been very lightly microwaved. So ask your friends, ask your friends that don't know yet that they're targeted. Do you feel a little strange? Are your mornings not the same? Do really weird things happen with your electronics? Because that's I watch a YouTube podcast sometimes in the morning, and the host, he's a famous person. I'm not going to say who he is, but he's always having issues with his printer, and I know he's so very targeted, and he doesn't know it. So it's just my advice to those that wonder, am I on the list? My advice boils down to these two words: pay attention. Pay attention to the things that seem to be random happening now, and that they normally didn't happen in your life. And when you start paying attention, that's when you realize, oh my God, this might be it. And I'm just really thankful to have him on board to help us spread this, because like he very well said, this case, many people don't understand it, but this case is the cornerstone to bring down the mind control of a population that has been planned to pretty much take over. And like I have said before, this is the first of many cases we have in the works to fight that mind control and to fight for freedom, because we are born to be free. And that's why I am giving all my heart and soul to this case, because freedom is a basic human right that we all must fight for. So thank you, Len, for your efforts and for doing this, and thanks, James, because you were awesome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thank you. I really have nothing else to add. I mean, what can you add to these messages? Pay attention, care about your freedom. It's been a wonderful show, and I will see you next Sunday. And our special guest will be Derek Robinson of Pact International. And we will be talking about unity in the TI community. And I think this unity needs to extend beyond the community. We need to unite as Americans to win this war against humanity. Have a wonderful Sunday.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.